I just want to now look forward a little bit to 2022, but also at the same time, I'll set the context a little bit around the Canadian Survey on Disability, just so people understand sort of the behind-the-scenes look at what goes into the survey and sort of the steps it takes to get us to the point where Gail and Stuart are able to do the tremendous analysis that they've been doing. So as many of you already do know, Stats Canada has been collecting disability data for more than 35 years now. The Canadian Survey on Disability is the most comprehensive data set for persons with disabilities in Canada, and it's conducted in partnership with ESDC, who are tremendous partners in funding the survey and also doing the analysis. The survey itself in 2022 will have a sample size of approximately 50,000. Sure. Okay, the survey in 2022 will have a sample size of approximately 50,000. It's an eligible population that comes from our census of Canadian adults aged 15 and over, living in private dwellings in one of the 10 provinces or territories. The 2021 census administers a set of questions to identify if a person has a limitation in their daily activities. From that set of questions, that's where the sample is drawn for the Canadian Survey on Disability. The survey itself is collected in an internet online collection platform as well as a telephone interview type of format. And in 2022, we'll be adding new content specifically around accessibility to react to the passage of the Accessible Canada Act in July. Just to highlight some of the milestone timelines for the survey, right now we're doing some outreach and consultations with partners and participating in events like we are today. So it's a great opportunity to reach out and identify some of the current and emerging data priorities and things that are really of need to the community and disability organizations. So that work is being basically starting now and will continue into the spring of next year, at which point we'll start the development of the survey questions themselves and then begin a period of testing. All questions, as I'll show in my next slides, are rigorously tested at Stats Canada and must pass a series of very rigorous tests in order to make it onto the survey at the end of the day. The collection for the survey in 2022 will be the first half of 2022, starting in January, at which point, when collection finishes, we'll begin processing the data and then have it released about a year later. So we can go to the next slide. So the core themes, I'll just highlight some of the core themes of the survey that are sort of the core content that creates the questions. So essentially we have questions on aids and assistive devices, which identify which devices people use, which devices people need, and if they do not have these devices, we identify what's the barrier that's preventing them from getting these devices, whether it's cost or availability or accessibility. We identify these types of information up front in the survey. We also have core content around labor force activities. There are many of the same questions that appear on the labor force survey at Stats Canada. But we identify, again, if a person is employed, in which industry occupation. We also collect information on employment equity, which is legislated by law in the survey. So there's some questions there around workplace accommodations and if people have the accommodations they need in order to participate in the labor force. We also have a series of questions on education and educational experiences of persons with disabilities, whether or not they're still in school and what sort of accommodations, again, they need in school. We also collect information on supports and therapies and if people are using medications or if they can't get the medications that they need. Again, what's the barrier that's preventing them from getting access to these services and medications, which is a key component of the survey. Finally, towards the end of the survey, we have a series of questions on self-rated health, access to the internet, and other questions. And this is where we may see some questions on accessibility also sort of fit into the sort of core content of the survey. Finally, at the end of the survey, we end up linking to the tax files, which adds information around income of respondents, which is very useful, again, in our analysis. So just a little peek behind the scenes of the questionnaire design process. How do the questions actually make it onto the survey? We go through a series of steps at Stats Canada, and we ensure that all questions are adequately tested. This includes testing within Stats Canada, within the groups that are working on the survey development, as well as external testing that takes place in cities across Canada in both English and French in a series of qualitative testing rounds that we do with our questionnaire design folks. We have to ensure that the questions are very easy to administer, both over the internet as well as on the telephone. So since we have multiple modes of collection, these questions have to be very easy to administer. And also, again, collect accurate information. If the questions are misleading or inaccurate in their design, If there's a flaw in that, it'll be inherent in the information that we collect, and the analysis that we do won't be quite as useful as it is intended to be. We also have to ensure that questions are easy to process and we're able to produce the data set as quickly as possible. And again, questions have to be respondent-friendly and interviewer-friendly, so respondents can complete the surveys on their own at home or over the telephone with the help of an interviewer. Just a quick look at some of the design players that go into making questions. So we have the survey managers, such as myself. We have our external clients, and we also have our collection partners who build the application, collect the data, and then process it for us. And I'll just highlight our questionnaire design resource team are the people that we work very closely with to design the questions, and they're the folks that also review and test the questions, and ultimately at the end of the day, they have the approval or the recommendation to send that for approval to our chief statistician, who approves the survey content. So he's a very key component of the survey. And just the last slide before. Again, just some considerations as we're starting to think about questions around accessibility and adding new questions to the survey. We just have to ensure that we meet several considerations, that questions are relevant, that they're simple, that they're easy to read. Short is always better, as we usually say. And if we can ever find questions that already exist on other surveys, that's very useful because we can sort of skip some of the testing steps along the way and ensure that the question works, and then we have a benchmark for data on other surveys as well. And again, the most important thing also is to minimize the respondent burden, because at the end of the day, if a respondent is on the telephone being asked a series of questions, we want to make sure that we get to the end of the survey, we make it as easy on the respondent as possible, and we get the data that we want to collect. So without further ado, I'll hand the microphone over to Pamela, who will talk a little bit about the accessibility module that we're hoping to add to the survey in 2022.
Thank you, Mike. My name is Pam Lahey, and I am a research advisor with Employment and Social Development Canada. And I am working with Gail from Disability. I work in accessibility. So together we're working with StatsCan, as Mike mentioned, to develop a module for accessibility that will go on the 2022 CSD. And I want to share with you that even though this accessibility module is new to StatsCan, it's actually a fairly new concept in terms of a survey that will identify accessibility needs or the people that are experiencing accessibility barriers. I'm bringing the design of accessibility. I'm looking at that from multiple perspectives. So from the perspective of a researcher, an academic, a professional, and a person with lived experience. And all of that was not on my slides, so I will skip the first part, but I want to actually spend most of the time on methodological approach. So if we could go to that slide. I did a environmental scan across multiple jurisdictions, and what does exist is a lot of instruments. Oh, only 2 minutes left, really? Okay. That will look at adapting for this module. But really, our vision is to have a module that embeds the principles of equality and independence and choice that we see in the human rights legislation, the ACA that has been created right now, and the UN CRPD vision of equality for people with disabilities. So that means looking at it from a relative perspective and not just checking off a box, but it needs to look at the person, environment, fit, and the experience that people with disabilities have in any place or space has to be on par with that of people who do not have disabilities. And in that respect, then we will have reached as full inclusion and met our vision for an accessible Canada. I just wanted to mention that this module is only part of a data strategy that is happening across the Government of Canada in multiple branches and divisions. Of course, consideration for this module, as Mike said, we will look at the content that already exists, and what we can take from that and adapt that for our needs. And then, of course, we're looking at the impact on other survey content, and is it comparable? Because we need to ensure comparability across surveys and across years. And of course, as Mike already indicated, it must pass rigorous qualitative testing. I have 2 questions that I want to pose to the room right now, and I'm here all day, so please come and hunt me down if you have anything that you want to add, because this is, I'm here to consult with the room and get feedback from external stakeholders. So my 2 questions, I just got the red hand. So my 2 questions is, what are the strengths and weaknesses of using the relative approach of accessibility? And what else should we consider in our question design? And those are the 2 questions I'm hoping that you can reflect on during the day, and I'm happy to take that feedback back when we go sit at the table for our question design, which will be the next stage of this module development. Thank you.
Okay, great.